Story time. Not really sure where I'm going to go with this, but I have a certain perspective in terms of time and information. And there are some concepts that I've been considering for a very, very long time. And it's kind of like it's not exactly an antidote to nihilism to think in terms not of one's own mortality, but of the fragility of information. But I've been, you know, thinking kind of lost in the problems of the the balance between the supposed perfect immortality of data and what turns out to be an incredible um, fragility that a whole lot of things face information that make it possible to get damaged. Um, and so I think about a lot of that stuff. And so the story begins with like literally several days ago. We're doing spring cleaning and spring cleaning out the garage. And the garage has like, oh my God. So we throw in like everything. Just gets, oh, what's this for? Okay, I just put it in the garage. And it just, that happens occasionally and occasionally and occasionally. And that's enough to just make any space really, really cluttered. And going through it, well, we found a hard drive, just kind of alone, not an old computer or anything like that. But here's the thing, it's a 1 terabyte hard drive. And as of this recording, that's not insignificant. That's, what could I fill that with? A dozen AAA games. I could put a huge number of, legally acquired movies. I could probably have my music library on it 1,000 times over. It's an incredible amount of space as just a spare drive, having it in a little dock or something like that. It's usable. I mean, it's really usable. Why would there be just a hard drive hanging out there of all places? Because the garage isn't heated or anything like that. Why would it be there? Whose hard drive is this? Ask around. Nobody knows. Nobody's missing a hard drive. Nobody kind of forgot it in there for some other project or whatever the heck. And I decided to clean it up. So it was in a garage. I mean, it was a little dusty, so I used some 99% alcohol and I cleaned it carefully so as not to have any alcohol go down. There's some air pressure holes that were on the other side, but I was able to clean the little external daughter board and connections and stuff. Treat it with some respect, and have a nice new dock that I plugged in, and I decided to look at it. I looked at it, and it's got like very little stuff. And here's the thing. Okay, so we had this. Like, I admitted that I'm gonna go and take a look at the hard drive. It's not just gonna get plugged into whomever called dibs on it, formatted, and they can put their stuff on it. I was gonna look at it, and the joke was, so you're gonna check for porn? And I paused for a second, like, yeah, like, of course, like, would you, would you watch it? Like, yeah. Why not? I want to know whose this is. But I look at it, and it's an amusing thought to find whatever the heck. But there was next to nothing on it. The only two things of significance that I could find are a very slight trace of Google Chrome bookmarks, and that was a pretty useful find, and maybe that would help me figure out whose this is, who this hard drive belonged to. And then I also found Outlook email archives, and I don't know, I've never used it. And sorry, that's Microsoft Outlook, the email client from back in the day, apparently, because this hard drive was not used in a very long time. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know enough, and apparently it's a proprietary format, and it's hard to look into this Outlook stuff. But I decided that never even came to mind. I decided I would use some data recovery software that I had recently bought, and that would actually let me look into this hard drive, and maybe I'll learn something. And so I plug it into a dock, and it's USB 3, which should be plenty fast. But I mean, doing this kind of operation takes a long time. It's like 7 hours. But even during that time, I was able to go in and look and see that there was actually stuff being discovered. And this software really has to do a solid job of piecing together the ones and zeros to create what it understands to be working images and stuff like that. It's not just because in the traditional file systems back in the day, something like DOS, FAT16 would you'd have a file name would be like the string of characters is the name, the 8.3, and the deletion would be just renaming the thing. And you rename, you knock off, I think it's the first character just gets turned into something else. And it's like, I'm deleted now. And the next bunch of data that comes along would see that block of file, but because it wasn't attached to a valid file name, it would just overwrite it as it sees fit. And there's circumstances where if stuff's accidentally deleted, you just go in and be like, oh yeah, and rename that file back, and you've got the file again in perfect shape. It's not as easy as that to actually do the recovery. So the software had to work really hard. And I looked, and it found some stuff, and I was poking around and like, wow, there's like vacation photos on here, like, of somebody I don't know. And nobody. So with the email archives, there was actually just a plain text file that had, I think it was 2 email addresses, or just like some, not the actual login information, but the like mail server location, the domain, and it had the person's name and email address. So I'm thinking, okay, well, that's definitely a need. And I checked with everybody else, and nobody knew who that was. Nobody had a friend with that name. So that's why I delved into the drive, into the history of the drive. And I'm looking around, and like, okay, well, let's check for porn. So I go looking, and I go looking at videos, and no, I do find a couple videos of like 1980s porn. So that already helps me understand who it belongs to. It's somebody who's either, I mean, somebody who appreciates 1980s porn is probably not going to be millennial. It's probably going to be somebody that was born in like the 70s, who grew up, and that was just kind of the thing that they like. And I look around, and I see that there are actually some actual personal videos, like vacation videos and stuff like that. Again, nobody knows who this is. I don't show anybody any of that stuff at this point. I'm just looking at it myself, because I'm definitely seeing somebody's history in there. And I look and I look and I look at pictures, because it takes a long time to reconstitute this data into stuff. And so I was just looking at pictures, because I mean, I'm looking at, there's tens of thousands of pictures being found, and there's a lot of duplication, a lot, but there's stuff there for me to investigate. And I find baby pictures, and here's the thing, it was an amusing idea at first, and it was a mystery, and it was free hard drive, and then it's like, who does this belong to? And then investigation. And as soon as I hit the baby pictures, I knew that this was serious. And I've had the idea of data archaeology before, and the archivism in that I really think in terms of being an archivist, in terms of the value of data. And there are memories in photograph, even bad photographs. And this is actually one of the arguments for back when we used film photography, and it is still used in some circumstances. But when it was only film photography, even in these really, really cheap disposable cameras, you'd have them in like a little cardboard container, and you'd have the camera built in, and it would have its role, and you didn't reopen it or change the battery or anything. You just did it. You took your however many couple of dozen pictures, and you give that box to a little like parking lot photo printer place, like a little booth somewhere, and they'd take the camera and they'd process it, and right there, and you wouldn't know how it looked when you take the picture. And you'd keep all of the pictures, even the ones that are fuzzy or awkward. And there was an extraordinary value even in the fuzzy photographs, because you're not getting that moment back. Now, with the introduction of digital photography, that has allowed people to, well, in the beginning it didn't allow it, but nowadays, certainly, if you're taking a picture on your phone, for example, you can go and you can look at it, be like, I don't like this picture, it's fuzzy, delete it. But so we're now missing that stuff, and there's actually very significant sentimental value in those terrible fuzzy pictures that we just don't have anymore. But we do have volume, and this guy had volume, and some of them were bad and fuzzy and stuff, but they're pretty good, and there was a lot there. And so I was looking at these pictures, and see, the thing about looking at somebody's hard drive, like if you're in a relationship and you don't trust your partner and you look through their stuff, that's a level of betrayal that I personally would consider unforgivable. And I hope that if you were entering into a relationship, that you would have the conversation such that you could, it's hard to bring up something like that, but you need to know between one another how much of that can be shared, because there are things about you that I think humans need to pull back and have a private space. And I think that the data we accumulate is part of that space. And obviously I'm making a commentary on privacy online and stuff like that. But really, in terms of, I mean, I had somebody's hard drive, and I thought it was a guy's because it was a traditional dude's name that was associated with the email that was bare. That was on the portion, the side of the hard drive that didn't need to be recovered, just the plain everyday stuff. But on the side that did need to be, that did need the archaeology, that side, that had a lot of intimacy there. And because we're talking about baby pictures, I mean, it's not like, I mean, it's easy to imagine the intimacy of somebody taking their self nudes or something like that for their partner, and they have a copy. That we recognize as being like, I'm not supposed to see that person naked. Like totally, I would totally get that. I hope everybody totally gets that. You look at somebody's hard drive, maybe you can make an argument for a gray area, but it definitely becomes obvious when you start seeing somebody's nudes. But I found myself at the philosophical level, I've already struggled with the idea, but it's a totally different thing facing it. Where, I mean, I'm a stranger, so it's not quite the same as somebody you trust, betraying trust by looking at their stuff. It's not quite that. and its hard drive has gone missing. So it's a little different in that it's mine, but it was deleted ish. It was absent from the public facing data, and I recovered it, or I can make it viewable. I actually don't have the hard drive space to just take that data, and you can't. Okay, so you can't take a hard drive that's been formatted, for example, and like unformat it in place. That might be possible with some software. That isn't possible with any software that I've seen. You actually have to have another hard drive, another space, not like a match hard drive or anything, another space, and you need to copy the recovered files over to that other space. And I don't have any of that, so I can like look at bits and pieces by pulling chunks out in, hundreds of megabytes of video, right? I can only do so much at a time, so I can kind of look around awkwardly. So, but there's in a sense, this person threw that stuff away, and if you were to go through there's a difference between going through somebody's stuff, like betraying and going through their stuff, breaking in and going through their stuff, going through their stuff, going through their garbage, and going through the city's garbage, and then going through my own garage for something that I don't know where it came from. There's differences there, and so it's not so clear cut that okay, so I'm nervous about it, and I'm still nervous about it. I was nervous at the time. I'm still talking about 2 days ago. And so obviously there is a moral conundrum there, right? I'm not absolving myself from the challenge, the ethical challenge. And this is one of the things I expect happens with the more unfortunately empathetic counselors and psychologists and lawyers and doctors who deal with very intimate things that even a person's friends and family would never, they'd never have that side of themselves revealed. And there are a lot of parallels. I hope everybody can imagine somebody else having things that are so intimate about themselves that they wouldn't admit to it. Or it's like it doesn't really apply in your daily life, so why talk about it anyway? So a person might not talk about their fear of heights until there comes to be certain circumstances and they need to play that card. They'd be like, oh, we should all go bungee jumping. It would be great. They're like, no, I don't really feel like it. No, it's not something I'm interested in. Oh, and you get enough of that kind of like friendly bullying, essentially, that they have to pull out and say like, no, it's an actual thing. I can't do that. There's certain things I can't do, right? That there's kind of that side of things, and a person's personal data is somewhere in that realm where you don't share a lot of stuff. And but really, where are the ethical dilemmas if a person were to take a physical photograph, not a digital photograph on a hard drive, but a physical photograph on a piece of paper in a frame and throw that out? Now, on purpose. So the actual owner of the creator of the photograph, with the permission of the subject, the owner of the piece of paper, the choice to throw it away. What is the ethical position of the person who is dumpster diving from the city trash and finding it, and they look at it? Is there any kind of awkwardness that person should feel? Do I have a similar kind of position? I mean, we don't really understand. We haven't updated a lot of our ethics, let alone, you know, about how we treat the digital version of stuff and the physical analogs of how we store this stuff. Like a hard drive is an object. If the object is thrown away, but it's different if the object is lost. So I don't know what the heck is going on, because I still, at that point, I still didn't know who this guy was. Terrible burning mystery, and I keep going through the pictures. I mean, I felt it, and I've talked to two dads, and maybe it's a dad thing, that there's an incredible, we misperceive the perception of parenthood bonding, and not enough weight is given to respect the way a father feels. And when it comes to something like memories, I think that every father will have a like, nothing's going to be more important than the actual child, but the memories in the kind of parallel universe where it's just data, the memories would be very valuable. And so here I am with a father's memory of his child. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, now I'm handling, like, it's not as intimate as a psychologist working with somebody's fear of heights. It's an everyday person working with somebody's maybe most important data. So there's a kind of a feeling of responsibility that's there. And I had, right from the very beginning, I actually opened up an encrypted folder, a container just for this kind of, well, I already had one available. So I was not even letting this touch my actual hard drive without it being immediately in an encrypted environment. And I wasn't showing anybody or anything like that. And so I already felt the weight of the kind of the respect that at least I would feel. You know, I would want a certain level of respect if I were the taker of the pictures, the owner of the ones and the earlier owner of the ones and zeros that I was looking at. I can put myself in that place, however awkward and distant that is, and try to feel through this. You know, use whatever awkward version of human digital morality or ethics or empathy. I've got all that, right, because I'm thinking about data quite a lot. And so it goes from like the curiosity to the, I mean, it's kind of like, how do I explain it? Because I'd have to explain what hacker means. So hack is a reference to it's a reference to fixing a model railroad, but it mutated into a kind of mindset of exploratory. It's hard to really articulate in a quick way without a lot of examples, but there's a kind of playful exploration that exists that I've maybe some of it is innate to me, but I'm not of the classic hacker type as such. But there is a greater personality that's there that I have a little bit of, and I have encouraged a lot of it, and that gripped me. And that's one of it's like artists that talk about being gripped by the spirit of the art, and there being a kind of something that's there that drives them. There's something like that for me exploring in that particular case for doing archaeology on this data. And so I'm exploring it, and I do feel the burdensome weight of kind of like, um, there's something called the hacker ethic, and it talks about how there is a moral limit to the playful exploration of, let's say, boundaries. And so there's a boundary there of me going into stuff. Again, I've talked about the boundaries of misplaced versus garbage, deleted versus not. Uh, all that is there, and it's not well defined. Like, we don't have mythology that talks about these things with ethical tales, and like, we don't have parallels for any of the traditional, don't steal, do unto others stuff in the digital sense for these circumstances. And so I'm kind of muddling through this without the guidance of the thousands of years of humans barely muddling through this, and the occasional incredibly articulate, enlightened person actually helping us everyday people, like, get a good, a good position, a good, like, the understand the moral thing to do, and really understand and help our actions and our innate ethics and morality all kind of get in line. And so I'd had no help in how to feel or think about any of this, and I'm poking around, and it wasn't just baby pictures. I mean, like, I wasn't joking when I said there were tens of thousands of pictures. And I mean, what if this guy formatted the drive, put a little bit of stuff on it, and went, "Oh, I didn't mean to format that drive," and just went, "Ah," and like, it got donated or something like that, or it got thrown away and then picked up by somebody who ended up, like, putting it in a box that somehow found its way. Like, I still don't know why. How does a hard drive appear? Like, that doesn't make any sense from the dimensional portal from which left socks return. I don't know how that's a thing. And maybe you can imagine how you would feel if your most precious ones and zeros were stolen. Like, your laptop is stolen, or your phone is stolen, you don't have backups. Make backups. Or it's damaged. Lightning strikes your house, fries your computer. That's a thing. That is a thing. Your hard drive just kind of like clicks really loud and then dies, and it costs $30,000 to recover. Do you have the kind of money? Well, you've got a student loan, right? So no, you don't. Okay. And you make a mistake, or your data's gone. But somebody comes along and says, "I have a copy of it." And that's kind of the position I'm in. I have a copy of this guy's data, and it's incredibly valuable. And it isn't just baby pictures, it's the entire story arc. And I went and looked further and further. It's his, like, school stuff, early relationship with the woman that he was to marry, their wedding pictures, the pregnancy, the early pregnancy, the late pregnancy, the day that she was going for the C-section, the literal pictures of the operating room, the it's not the birth certificate, but the hospital paperwork for the birth of the kid, like the baby pictures, the first year birthday, the more pictures, the vacation, the family vacation pictures, the fifth year birthday party. And it's like, okay, look, that's a heavy weight that I've got. And I was torn, like, I'm really good at what I do. And I can only say that because in this particular case, I had already decided, but when I really recognized that there was a story arc and realized that this might be really important, this might be the most important in terms of data thing that would happen in this owner's life, that if there was a loss of that original data in this, and I were to appear out of nowhere and go, hey, I'm kind of torn between what if he's really mad at me for looking at all that stuff, for having it, and what if he's really happy that somehow his old data actually exists, because this data is from almost 8 years ago. And you can imagine having the child would be a teenager now. You can imagine not having the early baby pictures, and then 13 years into that kid's life, hey, we found a piece of your literal childhood. Like that would be incredibly important. So I went looking for this guy. And the reason I can say I'm very good at what I do is I actually found his contact information, his current from 6 months ago contact information, assuming he didn't lie. And that's the other thing. How would people act if they learned that a complete stranger who has their most intimate data figured out who they were and how to get a hold of them, and then did? That's a bit of a challenge, because I had his phone number. I've got his phone number. I was going to call him, and how do I talk about any of that? How do I explain that I have already taken, that I really do understand the ethical struggle? How do I convey that I've actually gone through that I'm still going through it? So I ended up emailing him. I did actually email him. And I mean, after the fact, I have to kind of do the mental gymnastics to justify why email would be better than a phone call, because I was able to, I mean, duh, I write. Okay, so I was able to take my time and really distill, articulate the words that would convey pretty well what I was thinking. And the thing is, because I figured out how to unlock his email as well, I can judge our difference in ability to articulate, which just makes things a little bit awkward. So email might not be a good format for him, because it isn't for everybody. But he's a really articulate speaker, and I know that because I listened to some of the videos. The videos that went into the conversations about marital difficulty. Okay. I'm telling you, it's very weird going from whose is this hard drive to I know I don't know this guy, but you look at somebody's data and you can kind of like not figure them out, but there's something, like I said, there's something intimate there. There's a bit of a something there. And again, because this digital stuff is pretty new to humanity, I think it's reasonable for me to say that I don't exactly understand the feelings that I have, other than to try to have empathy and put myself in someone else's shoes and kind of think through things. Where was I? So do a little bit of the mental gymnastics, justifying it after the fact with me being articulate with words, at least typed. And I could attach a couple of pictures, be like, dude, I'm really not making shit up. And so I did that and I sent it off. Now, I haven't had a response yet. I can actually physically look as I'm making this video. Please don't do that yet. Okay, he hasn't responded. So maybe this hasn't been received yet. Or maybe he's still processing it, or maybe the email address was actually wrong, but I didn't get a bounce or anything like that, so I haven't been notified that that email address is gone. So it's going to come to the point when do I follow up by email? Do I call? Do I call and do I ask him to check his email? Do I call and do I explain? How long do I wait for that? Because it's not exactly like I get someone's number, or like I see someone cute and I get a number, and how long do you wait to call? Do I text first? Right? I'm old enough that I would just call. Like why would I why would I wait? Why would I text? I don't understand. But so I guess I have I guess I have something of the equivalent with email versus phone calls. And yeah, I could text his number too, can't I? So not gonna do it. Anyhow, I've actually got a cup of now getting cold tea. So yeah, we're gonna see how that turns out. And there's some challenges with respect to how I recover the data, restore it somehow, deduplicate, because I've got a whole lot of duplication there, and upload it or provide it, get another hard drive and send it to this guy, convince him that I'm not a con artist to make him, like, I really wondered if the guy would think that I'm blackmailing him for this or something. Like, I think I kind of am capable of evil thought, and I'm trying to think in those terms. And like, no, dude, I really just want to help, and do I plant it? Do I get another hard drive and copy it all onto it and then send both? Do I make sure that he knows how to get and use a copy of I wouldn't give him my copy, to go and purchase his own copy of the software so that he can analyze the hard drive himself if he wants to. And there are ways, and I can find a solution to any of those things because I am technical enough and I have thought about this problem already. But I'm still worried about how he's going to think, how he's going to feel, how he's going to respond. Because how weird would it be for somebody to approach you and have your contact information, get a hold of you, and say, "Hey, I have a piece of your life. Do you want it? I mean, I know I'm not supposed to really have it, but hey, don't be mad at me." I hope he's not mad at me.